under Rehoboam. Rehoboam allowed the perverted people with the idolatrous practices and temple prostitution, even homosexual practices with the temple prostitution. He also removed the queen mother, starting with Solomon's mother, which was Bathsheba. There was a special position given to the queen and the mother of the king, but he removes that from her influence, so to speak, and that position is removed under Asa. However, there is still going to be some of the high places. I want you to see this, and I want to read a real short thing from this section. Look at 1 Kings 15 and verse number 14. If someone has First Kings 15:14, read it for me.
Nevertheless, Asa's heart was loyal to the Lord all his days.
So with Solomon comes the temple. And so here's where the place of worship ought to be. And so whenever you see these things of high places, this is something that is not correct in their worship. And usually it's associated with idolatry. All right. So he gets rid of the perverted people. Good. But it says that the high places were not removed. I want to read from this section from the book from Michael Whitworth, How to Lose a Kingdom in 400 Years. Listen what it says. How is a kingdom lost in 400 years? In part by refusing to tackle thorny issues head on in favor of hoping that they'll go away on their own. But the thing is, they almost never go away on their own. Instead, they fester and rot and lay to decay in the community. Further on, he says, how much better if we deal ruthlessly with those things that lead to sin and hard-heartedness. Sin, like cancer, does not go away on its own. It must be rudely and ruthlessly rooted out if we are ever to be healthy again. This is true for families, churches, and businesses as it is for individuals, a truth that Judah learned the hard way. And so you think about this when we consider like practices that we see in our community and in our world, or even tolerate in our churches or individually within ourselves. It says that Asa's heart was in the right place, but he didn't eliminate the high places. And it's kind of, I hear this, and I've even said it before. You say, well, that's not for me, but I'm not going to pass judgment on somebody else. All right. And there's some wisdom of how to go about things and what battles we need to engage in. But if we just say, this is just good for me, and we leave other things out, I think we're missing what I think the writer here of this book is talking about. Asa's heart was right, but he said, well, they can do whatever they want to do. And especially as the king, he's got influence over those matters. And I think it would be great if he would have tackled those things more forthrightly. All right. He's going to have civil war with Israel. And so he's going to bribe or pay off Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, to help him against Israel. And so here is where Ben-Hadad is going to become a thorn in Syria, is going to become a thorn in Israel and Judah's side. And we're seeding things into other nations. Israel and Judah can't sort these things out on their own, and they're getting outside help on these things. So overall, good on Asa, but he also has some negatives. In Israel, the next one who's going to come to the throne in Israel after Jeroboam is going to be Nadab. And Nadab, he's going to rule for just 2 years, and he does evil. He is assassinated by Baasha. And then his entire lineage will be cut off. And you remember Jeroboam is told, hey, you're dung, you're waste that has to be swept away, if you remember from our Bible study from last week. After Nadab will come Baasha, and Baasha, after he assassinates Nadab will then take an assumed position of the throne, and he is going to do bad as well. If you notice in Israel, there's not going to be any good kings. So you can just chalk up they're all bad. They never get rid of the temple or the altars at Dan and Bethel, and they just kind of get worse and worse. We're going to see Ahab, maybe the worst of the worst today. And he'll be assassinated by Jehu. After Baasha, his son Eli, Eli, and he is going to then be assassinated by one of his chariot commanders. He's going to kill Zimri, is going to come in and assassinate him, and he kills all the entire line of Baasha. Zimri, great study on him, very short, but he reigns for 7 days. All right, he does the coup and assassinates, but he's remembered as he does wickedly. And he 7 days, but I think it's the whole of his life is bad and wicked, and so he commits suicide by burning down the king's palace, and he underneath it when forces are coming at him, and the forces that are coming at him are Omri. Omri is the choice for Israel after Zimri. Omri has a civil war even in Israel and with Tibni, and but he will be the one that moves the capital to Samaria. Samaria will then from here on be the capital of Israel. I know that's a very quick overview of all these guys, but they're short in your scripture. Those two very short chapters. But what we're really going to go to and look at today is with Ahab. Ahab starts in the reading we're going to look at today in 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29, and he'll go all the way through chapter 22. And so it's a lot that we have dedicated to this guy. Just at the outset, I'm going to say he's wicked, very bad. And we'll read this, and you can see where the writer is going to show you the examples of how wicked he is. But let's get a reader here in verse number 29, and go ahead and go until I stop you.
38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, began to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel 22 years. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ithbal, the king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. And Ahab made an Asherah. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. In the days Hiel of Bethel built Jericho, he laid its foundation at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, and set up its gates at the cost of his youngest son, Segub, according to the words of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua, the son of Nun.
There. All right. So he did evil, it says, and he did more evil than any were before him. And it says, if it were just it seems like a walk in the park for Ahab to be as bad and wicked as he was. And one of the things they're going to point out, and she's going to be featured some in the rest of the story, but Jezebel. And just hearing that word, if you know anything of scripture, just the word Jezebel, nobody's naming their daughters Jezebel unless you're giving a nickname to a very not good woman. All right. Jezebel is a princess of Sidonia. And so this is a foreign woman, and she's bringing that foreign influence of Baal with her. And there's some indication that you don't get as much of a focus on her, but there's some indication that she is this ringleader. She maybe is this priestess or thing that's the high priestess of Baal, kind of image that you get of this woman. And really, she is a behind the scenes mover of Ahab. There's some question about how bad was Ahab and how much influence does his wife have over him. We might put it in these terms: who wears the pants in the family? All right. And so she is a very strong influence over her husband, and she brings in this Baal worship. And notice it says that an altar was set up, verse number 32, and a temple. No longer is this just an altar, but now it's a full-blown dedication to, we're not, God's not sharing the throne with some other idolatrous thing. Now it's Baal is number one in Israel. And so think about this as an entire worldview change that happens under Ahab. The wickedness is, we are way off the rails when it comes to what he's doing here. And he's going to help the funding or the rebuilding of the walls of Jericho. Someone hold your finger here and someone read for me Joshua 6 and verse number 26. Joshua 6:26. Go ahead.
Joshua laid an oath on them at that time, saying, "Cursed before the Lord be the man who rises up and rebuilds this city Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest son shall he set up its gates."
All right. So Joshua, when he comes in and Jericho is destroyed, when they come into the land, God says, do not rebuild the walls. And the oath or the curse that is put upon is that you're going to pay for it with your oldest and your youngest. And there's a little bit of, I don't know what the word is. There's a little bit of, not sure exactly how this is read in scripture. Does he sacrifice his sons, literally sacrifice them, like put them into the wall, or because of this curse, when they begin the project, that's when that son dies, and then when they end the project, that's when that son dies. And so it's a little bit vague on whether it's he literally is sacrificing, putting his sons into the wall. All right. And what you see here is this reversal of the freeing or the opening up of the land of Canaan. We're reversing back to what it was like before Israel came into this land. And so this is a very, all these are indicators that he is not listening to what God is saying. He does not hold the word of God high in his thinking at all. He's completely changed that worldview for the kingdom of Israel. All right, keep going. Oh, well, and let me give you some information here on Baal. Baal is a pagan god meaning Lord, and he's the patron god of Tyre and Sidon, and he is this god of fertility and of weather. All right. There's different things that people do to help boost their fertility, fertility drugs and things like that. This is the fertility drug god. All right. But also he is the miracle grow that you put into the ground to help the crops grow as well. This is their God dedicated to these things. He's the rider on the clouds, as some people looked at him. All right. Someone read chapter 17 and verse number 1, please.
The Lord God.
So we haven't had this picture of prophets up until Elijah just comes bursting on the scene. There's no background that's given of him. He comes from obscurity. Scholars don't know where exactly where the place where he was from. He might as well be from Timbuktu. All right, and he just burst on the scene. But there is something in particular or peculiar about his name. Elijah means Yahweh is my God. Here is Baal country. And we've said this is the established religion of this country. And here comes Elijah. Mr. Ahab, there's a Mr. Elijah on the phone for you. Who? This guy, his name is Yahweh is God. And so just by his name, there is an affront against Ahab. And that the word of the Lord, and the rain's not going to come. Drought is declared by Elijah. And so this is going to threaten Ahab. This is going to threaten the kingdom of Israel. Think about this is going to be a threat religiously. Okay? What is Baal the god of? Weather, growing of the crops. He's the one who replenishes the fields. And so if God, Yahweh, God, declares there's going to be a drought, what's he showing his power over? Baal. Okay? Baal's nothing. Yahweh is God. Right? Think about that economically. We're going to see in chapter 17 about how severe this famine is going to be. And Baal cannot provide economically for these people. And when there's drought, there's no crops. When there's no crops, there's no produce. When there's no produce, there's nothing on the table. It's going to be some lean times for Israel. But also, again, politically, he has been established as king. He's married to this pagan, idolatrous woman. And so it's going to now reflect on him. Why are we going in this direction? Right? When the economy is bad, who's going to get the blame? Whoever's the top dog, right? If the economy is going bad, it's Biden's fault, right? It's the president's fault. If things are going economically bad here, it's Ahab's fault. You are the one to blame. And so the buck has to stop somewhere, and it's going to be with him. In chapter 17 and 18, we don't have time, and we're not going to focus in on Elijah and the prophets as much, but it's all a demonstration of God's ruling over Baal. Elijah goes to, look at verse number 9, 1 Kings 17:9. He's going to Zarephath, which belongs to what? Sidon, or the Sidonians. Okay, where's Baal from? That's this area of the world. And Baal can't help the needy and the poor in his own country, let alone in Israel. And so Elijah goes all the way up there to the area of the Sidonians, and he's going to help out the widow. She's at the point of death. She's making her last meal, and they're getting ready to die. And he performs a miracle for her. Later on, her son dies. And this is kind of the idea of Baal. We don't have all the things to go into on Baal, but Baal in the rainy season comes, and then Baal is killed and then reborn. Here is the story of the widow's son dying, and then with Elijah's help and with God's help, Yahweh's help, the son comes back to life. It's not Baal that's giving life; it's God who gives life. And so this is a demonstration of those things. And I overlooked too at the beginning of chapter 17, this is when Elijah is fed by the ravens. He's fed by the ravens, and he's also fed by the water that runs. And so while everyone's experiencing drought, look at God providing for his people. God is looking out for those who are loyal to him, like Elijah. Then in chapter 18 is one of my favorite chapters in all of the Bible, just to kind of mull over and think about the picture that comes in our minds. And let's go ahead and go on to it. Elijah, this drought has gone on for the third year. 1 Kings chapter 18 and verse number 1. It's in the third year of the drought. And he says, hey, I'm going to send rain. Now my word is going to send rain. Look at verse number 17. Someone read verse 17 and 18 as well.
And it happened when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said to him, "Is that you, O troubler of Israel?" And he said, "I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have. And that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and have followed the Baal."
All right. Elijah, we know him as the good guy, right? How does Ahab look at him? You're trouble. Anywhere you go is trouble. Can sometimes the person who is standing in the right and trying to follow God's way be labeled as the troubler, the troublemaker? How do you like being labeled the troublemaker? Are you ever labeled as the troublemaker? What's that? From a guy like Ahab, yeah, it is a compliment, right? And I don't know, my wife always says I don't use this word in the right way. There's a term in the modern sense called gaslighting. And the way I define it is they're the ones in the wrong, but they're trying to pin it all on you. All right. I think Ahab's gaslighting Elijah. All right. Maybe I'm not using that term right. Maybe Casey or someone, Paul can help me better understand it. All right. But Elijah is calling out the things that are wrong in Ahab. And so then there's this challenge, verse number 21. Read verse 21, someone.
I came near, all the people said, "How long will you go on living between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." The people did not answer him a word.
All right. And so the challenge is put forth. And there's this idea of, well, is Israel really going after Baal? Or are they just waiting around for God to work? I don't know. And he says, stop limping around. You can't limp on one side and the other. Pick a side. I love this chapter, man. It's just great. And so the 400 prophets of Baal, they are called out and they make two altars on the top of Mount Carmel. And the prophets they're cutting themselves, and Elijah's just playing around with, maybe he's asleep, maybe he's in the bathroom, maybe he's away on a trip. And so they're cutting themselves and dancing around and acting fool, and nothing happens. And again, what's Baal the god of? Weather. All right. So they set up the altar. I want you to see something here. Look, someone start reading in verse number 30 for me.
Come near unto me. Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones you built an altar in the name of the Lord. You made a trench about them, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood and laid him on the wood and said, Fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it on burnt sacrifice and on wood." He said, "Do it the second time." They did it the second time. And he said, "Do it the third time." They did it the third time. And the water ran round about the altar, and filled the trench also with water.
Pause right there. What's going on in Israel at this time? You see this significance? Water's precious at this time. And they pour out 12 bucketfuls of water onto this altar. Just to get in the scene, and I just get these mental pictures. If anyone ever wanted to build make a movie about different parts of the Bible, and this is one of those ones to go and see, because everything about this is amazing. So they fill the water, Fire is like put out by water, right? So how is this going to be lit at all? Elijah goes and prays. And it says fire comes down. It might be fire. I picture lightning in my mind coming down and lighten the altar. It laps up the water. Baal, nothing. Jehovah God, Yahweh. That's what's coming down and answering. Start reading in verse number 37, please.
That you have turned their hearts back to you again. Then the fire of the Lord fell to the sacrifice. The water that was. Now when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." Elijah said to them, "The prophets of Baal, do not let one of them escape." They seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook of Kishon and put them there.
Keep reading.
Elijah said to Ahab, Go up. There is out of abundance of rain. Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel. Then he bowed down on the ground, and he put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." He went up and looked and said, "There is nothing." And 7 times he said, "Go again." Then it came to pass the 7th time that he said, "There's a cloud, as small as a man's hand, rising out of the sea." So he says, "Go up," said Ahab, "prepare your chariot, and go down before the rain stops you."
I pause. The lightning coming down or the fire coming down is a wonderful scene and dramatic, but him telling them that rain's coming is another dramatic scene. It hasn't rained in 3 years. We haven't even seen so much as a cloud in this area for 3 years. But at Elijah's word, that 7th time when he sees this small little cloud over the Mediterranean, and they're on the highest kind of looking out, and they're seeing it, and he tells him, "I hear the sound of abundance of rain coming." That's awesome. There's something to be said here about verse number 41. And we think about Ahab and he's going after the Baals. It says, "Go up, eat and drink." The go up here is go up to the altar. Whose altar has the meat that's been sacrificed? It's not Baal's. It's Yahweh, God. And so there is a certain worship or bowing down that Ahab does on this occasion, acknowledging it's God, Yahweh, not Baal. And so we need to see that while Ahab is bad and wicked, there are some moments where he does make the right decision. And I think this is one. But he goes down and he says, "Hey, you better get out of here before the rain. You're not even going to be able to get your chariots out. It's not just a light rain that's coming. It's a gully washer. It's pouring down the rain." And he's got to make it down. And there you see Elijah, the runner, out in front of him, running down the mountain as well. They come to chapter 19, and we're not going to go into everything from 19, but it focuses in on Elijah. He's had his mountaintop experience and how quickly Jezebel has made him shake in his boots, and he runs away. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely need those type of people in our lives. The people who are willing to, it's not comfortable. It's uncomfortable when we're labeled that troublemaker, right? But we need people, like Ingrid said, in our lives. We are not God. Ahab is not the final authority, and he needs to be reminded of that, right? But Jezebel wants to kill Elijah, and Elijah is on the run for his life, but we're focusing in on the kings. All right, let's keep going into chapter 20. The Syrians come and they are, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I love the Bible because it's so glib, not glib or
I don't know what that word means.
not glib, but like it's almost like Hemingway wrote with very little description. And the Bible is kind of like when you think about slaughtering 450 people, that's a lot of dead bodies and that's a lot of blood. And so the visceral effect of the punishment for all those men, Jews, right? I don't think they were foreigners.
Nope.
You know, if we saw that on CNN today, it'd be a really big deal. So I think that the visceral effect of, you know, we can read over it and not really think about what just happened there. But and it also shows the righteousness of God, that when people are unrighteous, you can expect a calamity and a slaughter like that. So you know, that I just think it's, to me, it's like I read that and if you've ever, you know, I don't know, it's like that's a lot of righteous punishment right there, right in front of all the people. So you have this huge display of God's favor and his wrath, and then all those men are killed in cold blood. And so they might have been with their lives, they might have been, and Elijah just went slaughtered every single one.
Well, and
That's a big deal.
right, and like you say, chapter 18 is very pregnant with a lot of details, a lot of drama. And
We watched a movie. They made a movie of that.
that's what I'm saying, right? And there is something to say about we are in the Old Testament on some things, but there's got to be dramatic cutting off of the things that are leading us to sin. When we think about when Jesus says in the New Testament, if your eye or your hand or your foot, we got to take dramatic. Uh, we got to take dramatic action to take those things and get those things out of our lives. All right, but good comment. All right, we're not going to get all the way through Ahab today because there's just so much packed in here. But in chapter 20, let's go ahead and do it. Chapter 20, Ben-Hadad is coming with a great multitude of army, and he's coming to take chunks of Israel. And this is not Elijah. Elijah, I know, takes center stage, but it says a prophet. It's just a man of God in this situation. So we can be tempted to think, we can be tempted to put all of the importance on one man, Elijah. God's got 7,000 still reserved in Israel that have not bowed the knee. And so he's not alone. And you can see that in chapter 20. Verse number 13, someone read. All right. And he's going to ask him even further, how are going to, and he says, the young leaders, this is like your Boy Scouts. Go and send out the Boy Scouts as your crack squad out in front of everybody else. And just to prove God is the one in charge. And so he is able to deliver them. And someone read verse 22. All right. In springtime, he's going to come back. So get ready. He comes back in the spring. Someone read verse number, well, 23 is a very interesting. This is how Syria looks at it. These guys are, they got the gods of the hills and not the God of the plains. So if we fight them on the plains, we'll get them. And again, think about the mindset of these powers and these nations. Who's the top dog? Who's the top religious god? And Baal is the one over here that's the most powerful. And God, Yahweh God, demonstrates this over and over and over again. And he goes and wipes the floor with Ben-Hadad there as well. And we'll pick back up with this next week. God's not just the God of a certain geographic location. He's not limited. All right. Yep.
Quick announcement here, because the weather's